Oh, check it out. There's actually fans. There's not many of them, but still. Did you read this?
Yep.
Although for fans, they sure do complain a lot. There's Sam girls and Dean girls, and what's a slash fan?
As in Sam/Dean. Together.
Like, together?
Yeah.
They do know we're brothers, right?
Doesn't seem to matter.
Welcome to Idling in the Impala, a podcast by and for lovers of Supernatural and the fanfiction it inspires. I'm Karlee.
I'm Sandra, and we are thrilled to welcome back Supernatural FanFic author Amy. You may know her as Dugindeep on 803. She is part of the moderating team for the anonymous comment meme SPN Masquerade, hosted on Dreamwith. If you haven't listened to the episode yet where we had her and Ash on to discuss kinky prompts, we'll drop a link to it in the description. Amy's been posting fics on AO3 since 2011 and has a library of over 200 stories. She primarily writes RPF and Wincest with the occasional dabble into other pairings. So big thanks for joining us and welcome back again to the podcast, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming back.
So I know we talked a little bit about how you got into Supernatural and everything on the last episode, but for those who haven't listened, could you tell us when exactly you got into Supernatural?
Yeah, so I should have done the math again. I did not do it last time either, but I do remember while season 4 was airing, I started to watch it from the beginning with CDs or discs, DVDs, back when you used to get them even from Netflix. So I had to do the whole thing of like, I was like, I'll give this a try because I was into JDM at the time. I knew I had a couple of friends from other fandoms who had listened, who were watching it. So I saw them talk about it on LiveJournal back in the day, but I just didn't really get into it yet. And I was like, well, I'll give this a try. And then within the 2-3 episodes, I was sold. But then, of course, having to wait, like, okay, well, now I have to get the next disc and I have to mail it back and wait again. And I feel like
that kind of stuff too.
Don't know what that feels like.
They don't understand, do they? They don't understand we have to wait. And even that was just like the biggest. I just remember when I had gotten my Wii, and then you had Netflix on the Wii. I was like, this is
wow.
But then like the connection was so awful that nothing would play past like 5 or 10 minutes. And it was just like, now we're just in this complete, like, just immediate, give me all the content that I want. I think that even relates to fan fiction now too. Just incredibly. Yeah. When you say you were hooked a couple episodes in, so what were your immediate thoughts on the show? I know you've already told us, I think, who your favorite is. So Karlee's prepared, I think, to pause.
I just went back. I went back to the table because I couldn't remember. And I was like, I'm not going to ask again because I probably have already asked. So I just went back to the table and then just went quietly under my breath. Fucking, he's heavy, y'all. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the second episode, it was Dean.
Okay.
I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm in love with this little spunky little heartthrob. I mean, and then of course, as time went on, of course, it became all about the brothers. And, if I didn't, not to be controversial, I don't understand how you can watch that show and not care about the brothers and like watch it for 15 years. I mean, I realize people get different things out of the show, but for me, it's always been, that immediate kind of, rush of excitement whenever there's the brothers protecting themselves, each other, or coming back together when they've split up, and all that kind of stuff. And so it was mostly Dean. And then I think also, I mean, season 1 was just kind of fun with all the Monster of the Weeks to get through. And then I still believe that season 2 has some of the best stuff, and it's like just such a great run of really good episodes in a row that I've probably watched those episodes the most out of anything. And that's, just really good stories, good humor, the brothers being brotherly, all that stuff.
So what do you think kind of made it come into its own a little bit more in season 2? Do you think it was dropping a lot of the maybe urban legend stuff and just focusing more on, say, like, I guess one overarching theme? Because I think in season 1, it was like trying to figure out where Dad was. Like that was maybe kind of like the thing, but then with a lot of
we dealt
Monster
with
of the
that
Week.
problem in season 2. We were just like, we can't be bothered with this anymore. We'll just kill it off. It's fine.
Yeah.
We know where he is. Hell.
Yeah. He's over on Grey's Anatomy. So he's going to die over there too.
And then The Walking Dead. I don't think he died in The Walking Dead though.
No. Speaking of, I feel like I've always like I watched The Walking Dead when it was on, and I was into it, and I had this big thing about like once he was on it, I'm like, I feel like there has to be a crossover somewhere, but have it be a bit fun of like Sam and Dean ending up like in the Walking Dead universe and coming across Dad, coming across Lauren Cohen, like all that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah. That would be cool.
I've always wanted to do that, and I just never really got around to doing it.
Wow. Yeah, that would be neat.
You haven't watched The Walking Dead, have you, Sandra?
I haven't. I know of the characters now. I actually knew. I think I was trying to figure out why Lauren Cohen was like, when I looked at the back of the Blu-ray, like, why is she like hyped up on the back? And I was like, oh, okay, she's on a show called The Walking Dead. And I didn't, I know of it, but I didn't realize she was on it. I knew about Jeffrey Dean Morgan and the Bat. I think that's about like my extent of it. Yeah.
I don't think, and maybe you'll agree with me here, Amy. I don't think Sam and Dean would have much trouble identifying John Winchester in Negan either. It's a very similar kind of character. It's not like, there are certain things that JDM has done that you go, oh wow, that's really different. And then there's John and Negan, and you go, oh wow, that's what happens if you change up his jacket. Oh, cool.
Give him a beard.
Give him a bat and a beard. Yeah.
I mean, I do feel like there's times, if you think about people who write fics where John is truly, truly like the worst father possible, like that is not far from Negan at all. Like, I think absolutely John on screen, I think at times they tried to, make him sympathetic and, but then also later years writers kind of a little bit ruined that image when they would make little side comments about how he was, always abandoning them and wasn't the greatest father, which I mean is true. But I think it's almost like if someone were to write something with like, the truly horrible, abusive John, that it would not be that far from how Negan treated his people. So
no, I agree. Yeah. I agree. And he was such a cool, badass villain. I'm not going to get off on a Walking Dead tangent, but he was so cool and so badass, and then they just fucking neutered him. And then I stopped watching. So I don't know. I don't know if he ever got back to being a badass, because I stopped watching around.
Well, what's the spinoff like? Because doesn't the spinoff have him and Lauren in it?
Him and Lauren, yeah, like in New York. Actually, I've been meaning to watch. Sorry to keep going off on a tangent, but I do really love TV in general. I've been meaning to watch it partly because I do really love apocalypse type stories about like trying to survive with nothing and how do you do that. But I've seen some of the previews, and the one kind of bad guy is, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's one of those guys who's been on tons of stuff, and like, you're like, oh, that guy. It just seemed cool to think like, oh, they're going to be out like on this island in New York, I think like Long Island or Manhattan or something, and just being but also in my head was like, well, how did they get all the way up there? Were they just transported like, hey, let's put them in a new world? It's just, I don't know. But anyways, yeah.
Well, they should actually, like, once the actors strike, they should get Jared and Jensen to do something on there, even if it's like a cameo or something. People would go, well, at least, Supernatural people would go nuts about it too. Like, throwing them in there for like a one episode thing. I think that would be neat. Yeah.
I think they'd get a couple million new viewers just for that episode.
Just for that episode. It's kind of like when Soldier Boy pops up like on Gen B, and then everybody's like, whoa.
I was just thinking that like boys fans would probably tune in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm fully on board with all of this in theory, but I don't want The Walking Dead to keep making fucking spin-offs. Like, we're done with this shit. We're done with it. And I say that as someone who didn't finish the series, but quit out of sheer boredom.
When did it finish? Did it finish like last year, or is it still going? And
maybe
I'm just
like 2 years. The original Walking Dead is done, and then they did. Like last year was the spinoff with Negan, and then aren't they doing
There's a spinoff with Daryl now.
Daryl, like in Europe somewhere. Which again, how did he get to Europe?
I don't know.
Like there can't be planes operating. We're in a damn apocalypse for 10 years. Like, I just don't understand.
Oh my god!
See, that was the thing. The Walking Dead was amazing in the first few seasons when the walkers actually were a threat, and it was truly apocalyptic. And then I kind of liked what they did when they were like, when they were going around like the museums and trying to get like the old technology that they could rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool. But by that point, they'd split everything up so much that I didn't know who was who anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't follow it. And then there was the whole thing with the Whispered, and they killed that person who I will not name in case anybody listening hasn't finished. And then I was kind of like done with it.
Yeah.
And then I stopped, and then I found out some stuff about Norman Reedus, and I was like, well, I guess I'll never finish this now.
Oh no.
I'm a bitch. Yeah. So
I think that's sort of the plight of a lot of shows that have been on for a while. I mean, I think Supernatural is a good example of that too. The suspension of disbelief and just go with us. I mean, and again, Supernatural's fantasy, sci-fi, like all that stuff wrapped into this package. But there's some things that at some point you're like, but how and why? And like those kinds of things. I almost feel like the first few seasons have that sort of not innocence to it, but just it's more grounded in their reality. And then as it, Karlee and I've talked about too, like the baddies, like every season, it's like there's another big bad, and like how many big bads until it's just you can't get past this ultimate big bad kind of a situation. It's like not everything needs to be apocalyptic. It can just be them surviving in their world, and how they go about doing it, that I think is interesting to watch. So yeah. I don't know.
Say A+ for bringing us back to the early seasons of Supernatural.
I was
She's
trying.
good, isn't she? She's good.
I was trying because I wanted to know too, like in terms of like season 2, like what are the like what makes it stand out for you? I know you said really good episodes, but like did you find a big delineation between like season 1 and season 2? Did you see a shift in like, I don't know, anything in particular, or was it just the episodes, maybe the way the stories ran together, the thread line, like anything like that?
The hair was better in season 2.
I think some of the ones that come to my mind immediately that I love in season 2, I think are unique. And also it was like kind of the first time they did like certain things, or they, or even like, cause like, I love, God, why am I blanking on the names of these when I've seen them all the frickin' time? Night Shifter, right? That's the one with the bank job.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, we did see a shapeshifter in season 1, right? Because it was the one with Sam's college friends. But like here, it kind of like took it to the next level. And I just thought it was really smart how they handled it with like being like locked up in a bank, but like you don't know which person it is. And it's switching throughout the night, and you start to feel kind of claustrophobic in it. So I feel like some of the storytelling or the ideas were a bit like just tighter and smarter. Like they found their footing. And then also I feel like a lot of the character pieces felt stronger, partly probably because I think like Jared and Jensen probably found more of their stride as the characters. And again, the writers felt more comfortable writing in their voices at times. Like look at like Hollywood Babylon. Like a lot of that was just like really neat, and a lot of wink, nudge, nudge to the audience of the actors and how Hollywood is and that kind of thing. So I just feel like some of it got that way. I think there's times I go back and I rewatch season 1 and like they're so babies. But there's times where it just, some of it feels like the acting feels a little stiff to me at times, just because I think they were still finding their way. And maybe also just, I don't know, part of the business, maybe that, being unsure of how long is this thing going to last. And then in season 2, you're like, okay, we're here for a bit. Let's keep going. And I just think it had a better structure. And also maybe because we already had a lot of the lore established in season 1. So maybe you didn't have to do as much exposition into season 2 at times, right? Like when you're doing ghosts, you don't have to explain all the rules of the ghosts. We know what needs to happen now. Or like with the shifter, we know what a shifter is and how it operates already. So they can just jump right into the story.
Yeah, or the vampires or like the demons and different things like that, and how they were just like building off of. I do like how once it's established, it's just like, okay, you've got this information. You don't have to, it's shorthand at that point. And I think that's a great thing. I get a little irritated when sometimes they change the rules up a little bit. You're just like, wait a minute.
Like LOL canon.
Wait a minute. It's like, okay, how many people have actually gone back writer wise and looked at, there's got to be like, come on, we've got wikis, people. All you got to do is look this stuff up, and then you'll know what works and what doesn't, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So that was a little, I don't know, just maybe not lazy. That's not the right word. Just maybe not as careful, with the storylines to make sure things kind of matched up. But again, as it just builds and builds and builds, sometimes it could just get out of control.
I think with those early seasons as well, there was that, and I'm not going to detour us back, but there was that edge of like actually really struggling to defeat things. You know, things were a challenge in those early seasons, where you look at the later seasons and they're like hanging out with demons and they know how to do everything. And, you know, everything then comes down to the next big bad of the season. Whereas in the early seasons, it was, are we going to see out the end of this fight? You know, like the bank episode, can we actually find the shifter before it kills everybody and it kills us? And, you know, there was more tension in those early seasons, I think.
And there was also, speaking of the bank one too, is like there was the tension of like the outside world. Like they're also in that one, they're also battling literally the cops and the FBI outside who thinks they're the bank robbers. Yeah. You know, and they have different episodes like that of them still trying to slink around behind the law. Whereas I feel like after a while, it's almost like they forgot about that, or they made the law pretty dumb and made Sam and Dean just so slick that they could just, you know, shake a hand and then sneak in the back door of a police station, like in the middle of the night, and no one would notice. You know, it's just, I mean, I don't think that actually happened. I'm making that up, but
I'm thinking that I've read a fic that starts like that, actually.
Yeah. So it's just, that's where like you lose some of like the outsider tension as well, of almost like, it doesn't, after a while, I think in later seasons, it doesn't feel grounded as if this could be still part of our world. Whereas I think early seasons do, because they do bump up against that kind of thing, right? Of like people thinking they're crazy, or like not being able to get like the info they want, and, you know, being, you know, having the reality of boundaries of like the law or other entities and agencies, like not helping them. And so I think you lose that after a while too.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe like the fact too, like the end of season 2, it was like, well, you know, they killed Sam off and then brought him right back. Like, do you think that kind of like also, I don't know, like shattered this, oh, well, what is the weight of somebody dying on this show? And like, what's the permanence of it? And kind of stuff like that.
No, that was in season 4.
Yeah, I was gonna say more later on, maybe when they kept bringing like the guys would die like at least once a season.
Oh, but not Mystery Spot. That wasn't it.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
All right, no, right. I will tell you exactly when the weight of death was completely destroyed, and it was in that episode where they go to heaven, and you get told that this has happened again and again and again. Yeah. But this time they're going to remember it, and you're like, oh, right, okay, everybody just cool, right? Death is just a long sleep, cool, right? Okay, no.
Yeah.
Don't you talk to me about Mystery Spot.
or when they start, you know, making deals with death, but not the Billy, when they start making deals with Billy. Like, again, when they start making deals with all these big bads, like who used to be big bads, and I don't know. I think I will say though, as far as like the weight of the death in early seasons is, I'll say for me, it didn't hit me as hard, but probably because since I was watching it when like 4 seasons were already airing, and so I knew that Sam and like I knew they have to come back. Like after the first season when they get the car crash, you know, I'm like at the end of the first season, I'm like, well, I know they live. Yeah. You know, and then it's like and then it's like at the end of season 2 or even near the end when Sam first dies, I'm like, well, I know he must come back somehow. And the same when Dean goes to hell. You know, it's like, because what's funny too is during that time before I started watching it was I used to be a pretty active bowler in a bowling league, and it was on the nights that the show was on, and they would always have it like on a TV in the bar. So I would see snippets of it. Okay. And so that's how I knew the brothers were still alive. I knew they were still hunting, or I saw things with like Cass in it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the angel. And I would see things, people talking about it on LiveJournal before I was really into it. Okay. So when I was watching it and binging it myself, I didn't feel that weight of, oh God, what's going to happen? Like a live TV viewer would feel, having to wait all summer to find out, is he going to live?
Is he going to come back? Yeah. I do think as well, though, seasons like 1, 2, and 3, even though we knew, because I was the same as you, Amy, a lot of seasons were out before I started watching it. So I was like, man, no one's going to die. It's going to be fine. But they held more weight, as in there was a price to pay. So yes, they survived the car crash, but they expect, like, John had to die for Dean to live. You know, Dean had to sell his soul for Sam. There was like a weight and a price to the death.
Mm-hmm.
And a game with Mystery Spot, it had a weight to it, even though it was repetitive. But then you get to season 4 and you find out that they've died so many times and the angels just keep bringing them back and there's no weight anymore. This is just Tuesday or Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it lost me. Cold Oak kills me to this day. They still cry.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Well, I'm going to ask Amy, did Dean affect your bowling score at all when you were?
Be like, wait, I can't bowl. Just hang on 1 second.
It's really funny is, I remember around when I started getting into reading fan fiction and getting into writing it to myself, and I was like, I was reading and writing like constantly, and I would be like sitting at the bar, like right behind the lanes, like in between my turns, and I would be reading fic on my phone.
Oh,
yes.
And the people on my team would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Nothing," and like I wouldn't really be talking to them at times because I would just be engrossed in like trying to read like as much of this, 100,000 word story in between every frame.
Oh.
So that's kind of a funny way to tie it together. That probably affected my bowling score because I wasn't paying attention at bowling, but. Yeah.
Well, then that ties into my next question. So when exactly did your love of fan fiction start?
I actually used to write for another fandom I started when I was in college. And
fandom? Are you going to fess up? You don't have to.
Yeah, Backstreet Boys.
Oh, I like them. That's fine.
It was also like, so this was, dating myself. So this was like late 90s, that, there wasn't much slash and it was mostly like original female character Mary Sue type stuff. So wrote a lot of that and wrote that a bit throughout college and had friends that I'd met online through that. And that's funnily enough was a couple of those friends who I knew through that were the ones who started getting into Supernatural. Okay. And I would see them on LiveJournal, like talking about it. And so, yeah, I also have like very weird, like not weird, but it's just such a particular moment that I think about. I remember being a senior in high school and like writing like an original story. Mm-hmm. And it was like kind of probably almost Mary Sue-ish because it was about like what I was going through at the time with just being a senior and like moving on and like having like arguments with my parents and blah, blah. And it was just like this whole thing of me being like, I'm going to write this book. And I like literally have no idea where it went or what happened to it. 'Cause it's probably on one of those floppy drives, discs somewhere lost to the ether. But so I've always, so what, that's like 25 years been interested in writing fiction and telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So. Yeah.
And did I'm just out of curiosity, did Backstreet Boys ever go into like slash territory? Was that ever a thing that back then, or did that not happen?
No, I was not into. I remember finding a site or two where it was very like heavily like porn, slash stuff between them, and I was like, "What is happening?" Like at the time, I'm like, "What is this?" Like, like in a very weird way, not like "Ooh, what is this?"
It's just like I don't understand. Yeah,
yeah. I was like, "Why are they do they know that they're cousins?" Like, which is so funny to these days now. I know. Exactly.
This needs the slash intro on it now, Sandra. You have to put that one on. Did they know your brothers?
I will. I'll put that in there. Yeah. Okay. So it's just so funny. So then when you started, so I'm guessing when you got into Supernatural, did you start to search out fan fiction right away, or did that take a little bit of time, or was that like an immediate thing? Like once you started watching it, you're like, oh, I'm going to see what I can find in terms of fan fiction on the boys. Okay.
And I think, so at first I remember I wrote like a story or two that were like case fics, and it was probably kind of Mary Sue-ish again of like a self-insert like female character in the case who was like, part like a victim, like being chased by a ghost kind of thing.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, well I did that. And then I knew that slash was out there for both Wincest and J2. And I very vividly remember sitting on my computer and starting to type in Google like J2 slash fic. And
you then, like hunched over it, like
but then
before incognito was a thing, just like, oh god, I have to delete my history.
But then like literally doing it like on TV, where like then you're just hitting delete, like, nope, I'm not going to search this. And then
Aw.
like an hour later, typing it again and deleting it again or closing the browser, being like, no, 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 I'm not going to do this. And then finally, like reading it. And I still remember like some of the first things I ever found. And then I got, there goes the rest of, the last 15, 20 years of my life. So
Karlee,
It
how
do be
long
that
did
way
it take
sometimes.
you? Karlee, how long did it take you? Because I remember you have a similar story about like
A good couple of seasons.
Okay.
A good couple of seasons where I was like, I know there's so much porn out there of these
Yeah.
two. I know it, but I can't read it because I'll never be able to see them as brothers again. And then I think I got bored of like just reading female reader insert stuff, and I was like, fuck it, let's see what's happening. And then it went wrong from there. Well, I mean, it went very right from there, but God, I've wasted
'cause
so
look
many
at us,
hours.
like insert like the Paul Rudd gif. Hey, look at us. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess then my next question would, because I looked at a lot of your works, and a lot of them are based off of I think challenges or prompts and different things like that. What was one of the first fics you wrote that maybe wasn't prompt, or you said case fics, but then when did it turn into like I guess maybe your first Wincest?
I will preface to say, I think these days in recent years, like just, life and work gets in the way that I tend to like only make an effort to write like under a strict deadline challenge, and usually also with my friends where we're like, are we all going to
Right.
do this challenge together? But I mean, back in the day, like I was, I mean, I feel like it sounds kind of pompous to be like I was so prolific, but I was like I was writing nonstop, like I was putting out like 30,000-40,000 word fics like every other month, like in
wow.
Oh my
first year
God.
too. Like
Yeah.
it was great.
That
I
is
mean, I'm not saying the
prolific.
quality was great, but
No, but
I
still,
was constant,
yeah.
and I did again, like I did a lot of J2 in the beginning because I very much was like they're brothers like thing. And then I remember I signed up for a challenge that was actually like a femme slash, and my prompt was like for female Sam / Jess, like in college. And I started to write something that was like trying to do like female Sam and then like Dean and John, like try not as a pair, but it was to be like getting into the mindset of that, because I'd never written like it had been so long actually since my first fic was like a case fic with Sam and Dean, but to like write in that structure and get the tone right. And then suddenly it started veering into / between girl Sam and Dean. And I was like, oh, okay, well okay, like this was like, oh, like dipping my toe in of, well, the water's kind of warm. Okay. And I'm going to keep going. And then, so from there, I would mostly just do it like on masquerades because it could be like anonymous. And then I'd basically decide based on like what the response was. Am I going to actually claim it? Kind of a thing. And then I realized like I know I've probably written Sam and Dean a bit more often in the last 5 years or so than I did early on. But I realized I really do enjoy, like, there's a lot of times I kind of change up my tone for them to kind of have that like kind of spunky, like gritty, but yet like wink of the eye, like that Supernatural has at times, like sometimes it's dark and it's gritty, but then other times like it's, Sam and Dean bickering and being goofy. And so I guess long story short is it took me a couple years literally to like start writing like Sam and Dean. It was mostly just all J2. So
did you have because I know you were talking about like groups and stuff like that. Did you find somebody right away to kind of like bounce ideas off of, or did that kind of take a little while to kind of form a group and stuff? Or like when you were doing the prompts challenges and stuff, were you kind of like doing that more like on your own and then finding other people to kind of bounce ideas off of?
Yeah, I mean, it took time, I think, to like find the people to follow, like especially back on LiveJournal, because the way you had to follow fics was, you had to follow the people, or you would follow communities where people would post their fics to be like, oh, this is all Jared and Jensen non-AU, or this is all Jared and Jensen AU, or this is all Wincest, like whatever. And so people would post it almost like a newsletter to be like, these are the fics that have been coming out. So I would follow stuff there, and I did have a person or two that I liked their fics and I was commenting a lot with them. And then we would go back and forth in comment threads and start talking more. And then I could reach out and be like, hey, would you mind baiting this fic I'm working on? And like the first few fics I posted weren't baited because I really didn't like, have anyone that I was like buddies with at the time. And so it grew from that. And then over time, I'd say kind of the shape of groups that I was in kind of changed, people coming and going sort of a thing throughout fandom.
Right.
And then being able to more like bounce ideas off each other and having big brainstorming sessions of what we're working on, that sort of thing.
Oh, can you talk a little bit more about this? Because you said you have like Zooms and stuff like that. Do you guys do that a lot?
Yeah. So it started okay. So a little bit of background was like, it was probably 2017, 2018, there were a few of us who were all like racing to get drafts done for Big Bang in like the final few weeks that it was due. So we started doing like group chats to encourage each other. We would do like sprints where you'd get on, like we'd be online talking in group chats in Twitter or X, whatever. And you'd be like,
still Twitter,
okay,
always Twitter.
Yeah. Like we're going to write for the next 25, 30 minutes with no interruption. Like we're all kind of doing it on the honor system. And then you would report back on like how many words you got. So we were all constantly like engaging with each other, talking about writing. And then when COVID hit, it was like, everyone's at home, you're not doing anything. And we started doing Zooms. And so pretty much since, probably April of 2020, on a near regular basis, almost weekly, we've been doing video Zooms between like anywhere between like 2 to 3 or up to like 5 or 6 or, depending on who's available each week.
Oh, that's
so yeah,
so great.
it's just, and then that's given us the chance at times where we talk about fics or we talk about what we're working on. We also just talk about personal, how's life, how's work, what's going on, talk about current events, talk about the show, whatever. But that's also become sort of our Zoom crew to say like, if we've all agreed to do big bangs together, then we like brainstorm our ideas, bounce off ideas, talk about betaing, giving people like alpha reads and getting opinions back and just people that you trust that, you enjoy their writing, but you also trust that they're giving you constructive feedback. So
yeah.
You've experienced that a lot more now, Karlee. With
I
with
do.
Dreamer,
with Dreamer, she's my alpha and beta and cheerleader all in one. I'm like, she's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's awesome. I mean, I would like to think I'm not a beta, but I do the same thing for her. But it's just it's great to have someone to bounce those ideas off and go, do you think this is too much? Could we make this worse? Is this dark enough?
Did I hurt Sam enough? Is that a good like? I would joke with like Quick River loves, like a hurt Sam, hurt Jared kind of thing of just like the hurt comfort thing. And there was something I was working on with her and, if she's like, did I hurt Jared enough? She's like, it's just right.
I won't spoil what Dreamer is currently working on, but suffice to say it is very, very dark.
Nice.
So we've been going back and forth on that, and then every so often I'll be like, do you know what would make this so much worse though? And she's like, you're awful. And I'm like, I am, but you're gonna put it in. And she's like, yeah, I am though. Those are the things we don't share with Sandra. Those are the things we like. We don't need Sandra's opinion on this. She will be sad.
Yeah, I've been told no, you don't need to read this thing. Do you post anything that isn't baited anymore, Amy? Or do you pretty much like, especially like the challenges or prompts and stuff? How do those usually work out?
Yeah, I'd say like the masquerades, I they don't get baited, but usually it's, I write them, I post them, obviously like I read through them too. I know I don't catch everything. And then usually after a few weeks, I'll go back through and I'll reread them and may, tweak some things and edit it and make sure it's clean and then put it up. Okay. And those ones I just feel like the masquerade stuff, I just feel is more, or at least I tell myself that it's more low pressure because the whole point is just to like get a bunch of fun, kinky stuff out.
Right.
And, in a short time frame. So it doesn't need to be the most perfect thing I've ever written. But of course, like if it's for like a bigger challenge of, not just like dumping out a bunch of comment fics, that it's more of a, hey, this is the Christmas challenge, the gift to somebody, that I will ask for more support. Just also it's partly it's just to make sure it's clean, but also, I mean, I've certainly had times where I've written stuff and then, my friends give me really great feedback to be like, this section really goes on too long, or like, what is the point of this? Or you're not getting this other theme across that you're trying to hit. And so being able to talk through like, how do I get to where I want to go? And they've certainly, or maybe it's I have, 50% of the fic written and then I know where the ending needs to be, but how do I get through this?
Yeah.
So having a lot of great like help and support on that is just, it's like having an editor if you're going to do a book, right? They're going to tell you if you've gone off the deep end or, bring you back down to earth. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've had that experience, writing romance and stuff. I don't know what it is. And I keep like talking to Karlee about this. Like, I don't know if there's just like this apprehension about like doing the story, like, here, just give me all the ideas and then let me like, turn them into my own thing. Like almost like collaboration is great. But then I'm like, I don't want anybody to feel like I'm stealing their thunder or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that apprehension is like in the back of my brain about a lot of input and stuff, but it sounds so great. It's like I should just start doing it.
You are a prolific fic hoarder, though. You're like, no, it's mine. Nobody.
Do you know
can have
anybody
it
like
finished.
that, Amy? Like, I mean, I guess you can't within your group; they have to share. But like, do you know of anybody that sort of like maybe doesn't as much, and then just kind of like waits and like just spills it all out and shows you what they've done and posts it? Or am I just one of those weird people?
No, I'm thinking, I mean, I'll admit, I think as time has gone on and just, fandom numbers have dwindled, that it's in my head is like, I don't have as many, like, there's just, like I said, there's kind of the Zoom crew and there's not many other fic writers that I engage with, like outside of that at this time. But I will say what's kind of funny, and I'm sure she will not be mad that I tell you this, and she'll know that I mean it with the best of love, but Ash will ask for brainstorming help, and I will like throw out a ton of ideas, and she will never take any of them, and she will shoot all of them down. And there have been times where it gets a little awkward between us because I'm like, well, why are you asking for my help? Like, if you're not gonna listen. And it's like she'll go off on this other tangent with a story. And I'm like, why is that? Like, it's just, we kind of, there's times we don't see eye to eye on the kind of things that we want to do with fics.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, we still love each other and we'll joke where there's been times recently too, where we joke where she'll ask like, I'm going to need some brainstorming help. And I, jokingly, I'm like, oh God, here we go. We laugh over that, so it's on one hand, it's like, she's very, very vocal about talking about her fics and, she'll say if she wants feedback or not, but then also when you offer her suggestions, she'll like immediately go, well, no, I can't do that because of this, or I can't do that because of that thing. And,
but it sounds like it sounds like you're giving them all these opportunities to kind of really think out the process. So it's actually a good thing.
Sometimes it is like that. Sometimes you just need to to think it out loud. It's like the rubber duck thing in coding. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but like a lot of jobs that require you to sit and write code for stuff, having a rubber duck on your desk next to your computer is really common, because when the code is broken and you don't know what it is, if you read the code out loud to something like your duck, you identify the problem and you're like, it was there. And that was the problem. So
interesting.
It's rubber ducking. So you have to go, okay, this is my idea. And then people give you concepts and you go, no, none of those, but this. And then you fuck off and do it. But I appreciate from the other side, you're like, why did you even ask?
No, it's like a process of elimination that I think probably helps, in that kind of situation. So I think you're doing the good thing. You're fighting the good fight. You're
fighting the good fight there, Amy, for sure. I'm curious. I'm going to jump in with a question because I didn't write anything down, so Sandra doesn't know. I know that you said you primarily write for like prompts and challenges and things now, and they do usually come with like a Wincest or a J2. But if you're going to write just for yourself, or if it's going to be like maybe something bigger like a Big Bang or whatever, how do you choose if you're going to put like if it's going to be like a Wincest fic or a J2 fic? Like, is there any kind of criteria that makes you lean one way or the other, or is it just like how you're feeling? Or
Yeah, usually probably more the latter. I mean, I'd say if it's for like a big bang, it becomes more of a thing of what story idea do I have that's like a bigger story to tell? Because since it has to be longer,
Yeah.
Bigger isn't longer, not bigger to be like pompous, like, oh, I have a big story to share. But I mean, it's kind of that sort of thing usually that it's, I think too, I mean, I'm sure you guys feel this too, is that a lot of times writers will have a ton of different, threads in their head of things that they would like to write at some point, and then you kind of figure out, is that going to be able to get me through the story, or even is this the tone I'm feeling today, that I want to work on now? And because I've had times where I've had big bangs like half written with like a few weeks to go to the deadline to submit the draft, and then suddenly like I'm blocked on that idea, and I'm like into something else suddenly. And I'm like, oh, I really want to write this story instead. And then I've abandoned that 15,000 words to write a completely new draft and submit it. I'm a little absurd that way at times, that I tend to go more with like, what am I feeling and what am I into and what's flowing versus forcing things to work.
No, I think that makes sense though. I mean, I think that's what writing's all about too, is like, how you're feeling, what you want to get across, and that can change, the way our minds like to work. That can go from, point to point to point to point, and then maybe come sometimes back again. Do you have a lot of whips then that you just have, like when you say abandoned, like do you ever go, like, is there a percentage that just have not seen the light of day?
There's probably a handful.
Okay.
And also there's also a series that I've been writing. Well, I'd say have been writing when I literally haven't touched it for like 2 years, but I was doing like piecemeal of different pieces of it that have been all posted, because I was doing them as part of the Sunday morning porn club, like to make myself finish out the story.
Okay.
And then I think it just feels like a lot of stuff has just happened in the last couple of years in general, and then kind of losing the bandwidth or the energy to get back into writing at times. But also like that one feels like a lot of pressure to like end it in a good way, because a lot of people were reading it. And unfortunately, the last piece I wrote would be like the second to last piece. And it was right when they like had a falling out.
Oh no.
People are like, how did you leave us on this piece? And like, it's literally, I mean, I was posting like every few months that like a piece. And then now it's been like 2 years. And then I've been telling myself for the last 2 months, like, no, I'm going to get back to it. And I just still haven't, but
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I found it's really helpful to close the Google Doc and pretend you never did that. And then when people go, hey, like for my Demonic Junkie series, I do occasionally get comments that are just like, hey, just wondering if you're coming back to this. And I'm like, yes, soon. Yes. And now it's a disclaimer in everything else I post. I have to put a disclaimer in there that's like, Junkies is not dead. I'm still working on it. And in reality, guys, I'm sorry, I closed the Google Doc. I closed it, and I am coming back to it. It's a lot of pressure, okay? And I thought I was going to knock that out really quickly in May, and now it's nearly November. So there's a lot of time pressure on that as well. And now I'm like, oh God, no, I don't even want to finish it. Oh fuck, I will.
But I've seen a post or stuff too, where like people are like, you can have had like something just dormant for like years, and then you could just finally say like, you know what, I'm ready. And you have a piece, you post that part, and then you get people commenting right away that were like still there, still waiting, still subscribed. And if they see it, they come back to it too. So I think there's a patience involved with a lot of our, the people that read our stuff too, that, they understand if they've been in the fandom. I think in fan fiction realms, they know how the process tends to ebb and flow for a lot of writers too. But yeah, I could see that sort of self-pressure too. Just like, you got to get this done. I had a fanfic, like literally was like a decade old. And I had like found it on my computer, and I was like, oh, I should finish this. And then I ended up finishing it, because it's just like one of those things where it's like, so you just need a lot of time, and sometimes life has to happen, and then you go back to things too. So it just kind of depends. It'll get done when it gets done. I guess that's the best thing we can sort of like.
Yeah, knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes these, especially if you're coming off the back of an argument or a falling out or something negative happening, and then you're like, oh, I have to fix this.
Mhm.
I don't want to fix. Well, I do want to fix it, but I don't know how to fix it because I wasn't. I mean, I don't know if your characters control your stories, Amy, or if you are in charge. But I categorically am not. So I'm like, I want to fix this, but you guys won't let me, and I don't know how to make you guys behave. So just gonna close the Google Doc, come back to it in a month.
I guess that's where a lot of sort of like talking it through with other writers kind of helps with that too. Yeah.
Yeah. You still have to write it though.
No,
It's still-
I know.
No.
Still have
I'm
to
like,
write it.
I'm one of those people who prefers to write in order because like it carries like a through line for me, and I don't,
Yes.
and I do not outline. It's just more in my head of like what I want to do.
No.
When
I
I'm
outline.
doing big bangs, there are times I will jump around and just write if I have snippets of thought of like mostly conversations. Like my brain tends to work a lot more on writing around conversations,
Mhm.
and so I'll write a bunch of dialogue in different spots when like I have the like image, I guess, the visual of like what I want them to be doing and saying, and then I'll jump back around. And plus, for me, it helps with big bang drafts because since you just have to get to like 20K, that it's like I just need to get text in the doc and don't forget these spots, and then it's almost like harder work to bring it all together. But when things are working well and I can go from start to finish, then that's great. But then it's also like this series specifically that I'm talking about, like there are times over the last few months where I will just start to like have spinning anxiety of like, what is the opening sentence? Like literally, like I'm like, I need to crack the opening sentence and then I'll write it. Like it's just
Okay.
the weirdest thing in my head.
Honestly, that's kind of almost exactly what I do. I can have the whole story in my head and I know what's happening, but until that opening sentence comes to me, I can't write anything because I need to know how it starts, and then it can all go. But I gotta just wait for that. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have the opening sentence for Junkies. I have a few thousand words written for it. It just Samuel just will not get his shit together, and I don't feel like that's my fault.
So I'm just kind of to throw back on you guys is like one thing that I do is when I'm stuck, I like go back and reread everything that I had, or how do you guys process that if you have like a whip, or just even if it's like, oh, you started to write something but you can't get back to it even for a week, like are you able to just jump right in where you were, or how do you get yourself back into the document?
Do you want to go first, Sandra?
Yeah, so I'll usually I usually will reread like whether it's like the start of maybe like I try not to, even though I've been doing this more, like just starting at a scene or so before, like maybe like not the whole thing, but like a scene or so before, I'll start to read through it and then see if I can feel whatever that rhythm was I was trying to, continue as I'm writing. Then I do like to outline a little bit, like in terms of what my thoughts are for the scene, and then try to see if I can come up with that, I guess that starter point. But I do a lot of, so it's like a 3-pass thing. Like for me, like I'll like start to get some stuff down, then go back, flesh it out a little bit more, then like kind of like do it again. So I'm kind of like a 3-parter kind of person when I'm writing. But I've had situations where, in particular, there's a story right now that like I haven't looked at for 6 months, and I have these ideas, but it's almost like I'm scared to get back to it because I don't know if I'm going to know what to do in the next part. And I know I've left it at a point where it's like midway through a scene, so I've got to get back into it. But it's like you almost need to prep yourself, like put yourself in the whole mood of writing too, and that's different for so many people. Like I tend to be a late night writer, but then I've noticed like if I get up early with an idea and I write, I could then be an hour later and I'm still writing. So maybe I need to like embrace that a little bit more. So kind of like switching up the time when I write too, because that helps. But I think it's really important. You mentioned like the first sentence. I just feel like finding their voice is really important. So if it doesn't feel genuine, you got to go back and get that right until it feels like them. And that can be a barrier too, I was writing a scene the other night and it's just like, it doesn't feel like Dean yet. It doesn't feel like Dean yet. And I was like, how would Dean say this? And how would he get this point across? And I had to think about it a few times and go over it a few times until it felt like, okay, this is how he would say this thing. And then I was kind of okay with it. The first sentence scares me though. Now you guys have got me like, oh God, what if I can't like get anything out on paper until I get that first that first line out there. But Karlee, go ahead.
So I tend to, I do go back and reread the document, mostly because I describe the way I write as quite cerebral. So it's more inside a character's head than like, you know, a more formal scene setting and this is where we are and this is what's happening. It's more like a kind of like a stream of consciousness. So I have to go back and I have to reread to try and, you know, pick back up the mood and the tone and things like that. And then if I'm still not sure what's going to happen, do you all remember being like in like, I suppose middle school for you guys, but when you would write stories, they would just be and then and they would just be really terrible. And I vividly remember a teacher of mine going, your story, like not just me, the whole class, your stories are unreadable, guys. It's just and then. Mm-hmm. But that's if I really cannot see the next bit in the tone that I want, I'll just write like that. I usually have like a rough outline of what I want to happen next. So I'll just be like, and then this, and then this, and then this. And then as I get into that, it will flesh out and I will be able to see the story and I can go back and add in the points that are important. But yeah, I just got to get some words out and then it tends to flow better for me. I suppose the trick to that is probably not to just abandon things.
If only it was that easy, right? But, that's all it takes.
You know, like
keep writing.
Have you tried just not being anxious about things? Oh, great, I'm cured. Yeah. Have you tried just never leaving work? Yeah.
Yeah.
If only it were that easy.
It's like when I get frustrated, my dad will be like, calm down. I'm like, oh, gee, yeah, that works. Like, thank you. I forgot to try to calm down.
Nobody in the history of being told to calm down has ever calmed down upon being told to calm down, literally ever. So, yeah, we
still try though. We still try.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to work. You mentioned like themes and stuff like that, and I'm just always kind of, I just wonder if, like, as a writer, do you ever like just maybe not have a theme in mind and then are amazed when somebody else reads something and it's like, oh, I saw this and this and this. It's like, oh, that's great. I had no idea. That's not what I was going for.
That happens to me all the time. Oh my God, this symbolism.
You know, it's like
symbolism.
Yeah. Theme wise, like, first of all, how do you come up with a theme? And then do you ever have a situation where you're just blown away by what someone reads of your stuff and comes with something that's so amazing that you're like, I didn't have that in mind, but I'm glad you saw that kind of a situation. I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
I know. I mean, in my head I'm like, I'm sure it has. And of course, people also point out when I've, missed something, but, actually there's I can't remember exactly what the comment was, but it was probably like legitimately like my second long fic I had ever written. So this was, like 2009 or something. Mm-hmm. I remember it was J2 and part of it was supposed to be just this idea of, like Jared's a little, like impulsive and doesn't want to settle down kind of a thing. And Jensen is more of like the calming person of like, dude, like what's happening here? This isn't really just hooking up, like you're coming over more, that kind of a thing. And I just looked at it more as a thing of, it was just supposed to be of, the idea that Jared just thought it was fun and then kind of fell in love among it. And someone brought up the point of how more about Jared maturing over the whole thing and more of him, like just, it was something else more inherent in the character becoming his own versus just more of a, well, he just really likes Jensen, so he's going to chill out with him more often. Right. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I meant that, I think. I don't know. And it was just like a really good, like introspective comment on like Jared's character building over the story. And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I had that in mind right from the start. Yep.
Yeah. So I've had, that kind of a thing I've had happen.
Yeah. I kind of love that because I don't know. I really didn't do well in school with English class because I maybe a lot of it was teachers like explaining to you what it was you had to see in a story.
Is a fucking blow.
And it's kind of like more, well, I just kind of want to present something and I like that people get out of it what they need or just what they like overall. So I don't know. I guess I need to process themes more and stuff, and like maybe figure that out a little bit more. But no,
I think it's probably a case of you can't see the wood for the trees as an author, though. You're so close that you just need people who are not, who have not read this 50,000 times and don't hate it with the fire of 1,000 suns to come and be like, oh, look, there's this theme. And you're like, yeah, no, it's totally, I meant to do that. Yeah, no.
So is that a lot of too what your groups are about too? Like it's almost become like a book club. Like, are you guys like taking turns, like, talking about each other's stories and kind of like working on like, why I see this, I see that, or different things like along those lines too? Like when you guys share stories.
We have done that like for like Big Bangs. We were doing that where I think it was especially we were doing Zooms, like when we first started doing Zoom, and it was like writing, and then we'd like give each other deadlines to be like, okay, well, like we all submit our draft to the mod, right? And that's like May 1st. And then we'd say, okay, like then you have like 3 weeks to continue working on it. Because for most of us, our drafts would be just utterly just everything thrown on the page just to get to the word count and make it seem like there's an ending,
Yeah. I've experienced that now with this little mini bang that I'm doing. So I'm starting to understand that.
Yeah. And having tons of patches of like highlighted text to be like, this is where they go and do this thing. And like, and having to fill it out.
Yeah.
So then we would give each other like deadlines to say, all right, let's have like the next draft ready at this time. And we'd pace it out to be like, these 2 people are going to go on this weekend and these 2 people are going to go on the next weekend, and basically give it out to the folks to read ahead of time, like throughout the week. And then we'd all come together. And we joked because we have some academic people in our group or people who have gone through masters and doctorates to be like defend your dissertation. To say like, we're going to now tell you like, things we liked and things we didn't like, or try to brainstorm how to fix what's not there yet, or, or maybe even the writers are asking them specifically, like, did this part come across? Or I really want to get them to hear, how can I do that? And we would have very focused conversations on that.
Okay.
So we do that on occasion. I think just for all of us in that group, we've all have been writing a lot less in the last few years. So maybe it doesn't happen as often as it used to, but we do talk about it on occasion to say, oh, I've been writing. And then it's, oh, what are you writing? We all start talking about it, like excited for each other. So
Are you, I think we touched on this a little bit too when we talked about Masquerade, but you say you like noticing people just aren't writing a little bit more. Does it make you a little sad? Like, are you worried about losing something, I guess, like fandom wise, fanfic wise, when you start to see that sort of fall a little bit? Or is it kind of just with the ebb and flow of fandom and fan fiction, you're kind of like, you've been doing it for a while, you're like, okay, I'm used to it. This is fine. Just going to ride the wave kind of thing.
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit of both, of saying like, I'm sad for myself that I can't do it as much as I used to. Like there is kind of that, feeling of just being like, man, I wish I could get back into this. And like, it is a bummer to say, oh, I used to be so active. And when I'm in the zone, I had this recently, a couple months ago, I was writing something and it was like pulling teeth to even get myself to start doing it. But then once I did it, like I felt, it was that feeling of like, whoa, this is the me that hasn't been around for a while, of having this creativity and feeling accomplished. And so from that perspective, but then also, I mean, admittedly, like I go in fits and bursts of like fits and starts rather, of how often like I'm reading fic of other people.
Right.
Just again, because just life is, it's
busy.
been a lot in recent years. And
yeah,
I mean, I've, on a personal level, like I've had a lot of movement in my career in the last 5 years for the good, for very much for the good. But then that also means like I don't have as much free time, or I'm a different kind of exhausted at the end of the day that I don't want to then. And I work primarily 100% at a computer, and part of my job is also writing. So there are times where, it's the end of the day and I'm just like, I'm just going to go back on the couch and watch 90 Day Fiancé for 4 hours because I want to shut my brain off.
Right.
I don't want to be on a computer. I don't want to be thinking of those things. I don't want to be trying to figure out how to write sentences right now. So unfortunately there's that. And then I think it was when all the Big Bangs were coming out, like I got really into like trying to read all the Big Bangs, and then I would talk to my friends about it. We were a couple of us, we were all trying different big bangs and sharing with each other, like, oh yeah, no,
Right.
this one was really good, or oh, I struggled with this one, but then we could talk about it like a book club to say like, no, actually, I really liked that part, and like talking through it. So
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
No, the nice thing is, I mean, you've got all these fics for a lot of people to just be able to go back to and experience too. Do you do notifications and stuff like on AO3 and stuff like that? Like, do you have all that where you get like the kudos and stuff like that set up and all that good stuff? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get the emails when people are doing it or reading my stuff or commenting, and then I subscribe to a few people.
Right.
So I get the notifications when they've written something new, and then I can go up there and read it. So
Yeah.
Cool. Speaking of reading things, masterful segue. Sandra, I curated fics for you. Let's talk about them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Amy, for looking them over, because I know it's been a while. So one was Close Shave, which is a Wincest, and one was Like a Rolling Stone, which was Dean and Joe. I'll start with Like a Rolling Stone, just because I
knew you would.
I wanted to, because I know I'm gonna leave Close Shave for Karlee, even though I did love the Like a Dolphin's Belly. I thought that was awesome. The Like a Rolling Stone, I really liked what you did with Joe, because I felt like it wasn't expected from the prompt that I think, and again, I like how the prompts can be taken all sorts of ways. Like, I think the prompt was what Joe gives Dean a blowjob or something like that. And you took it very differently, where I think maybe the assumption might have been Joe being, I don't know. Again, and this is my assumption. Oh, it's probably going to be about Joe like virginal first time or something like that. And it wasn't. It was Joe pretty much going after something that she wanted and getting a little bit of insight into her experience as a hunter in a hunter's world, and how that really kind of gave her an equal playing field, I think, with Dean. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that part of it. But do you remember, like, since you read it over, anything you could remember about like creating that story, or like once reading that prompt, maybe like, how that came about? It's okay if you can't. I know it's
we won't put you on the spot.
Well, the day was September 27th, 2010. No, I'm kidding. The sun was out. No, it's funny. When you sent me in the questions to say like a Rolling Stone, Dean, Joe, and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the one when she sneaks into his room. And then I went back and I reread it, and I was like, oh, yep, that's definitely the one. So I've written a couple of fics with Dean, or with Joe rather, sometimes with John or others or whatever. So I was like trying to remember which one it was. But I do know, I will say that thinking about it now, especially, is the idea that, she grew up around hunters, and even if it's like, oh, her mom and dad run the bar, and like, but and her dad's gone now, of course. But the idea of like, she saw a lot of weird shit as a kid, even if she wasn't out hunting, right? Because she saw all these people in the bar, and I'm sure there were people who like were kind to her, and like it was like these were like uncles, but I'm sure there were some people who were kind of weird. And so my thought process, I think, was like to say that she thinks differently about these kinds of things. She's learned a thing or two over the years, but also like taking her power back from that, or even having power within it, to be able to know how to manipulate people to get what she wants, and to use kind of her feminine wiles and her talents, so to speak. But also, I'm really pretty sure that I wrote this. I'm sure I absolutely has to be because of the timing, but wrote this after like she came back in season 5. And I remember when I watched the show, I didn't really care for her in season 2 because she felt so immature to me. But when she came back in 5, she had this like maturity and growth of like being very capable and standing up for herself. And even like there's the one scene in Abandon All Hope when it's like, they're possibly their last night on Earth, and Dean's trying to hit on her. Yeah. And she tells him no. And just the way that all happens, I was like, man, I love this. Like she felt like a totally different character, but then I appreciated that growth. Right. To say like, yeah, she was kind of pigeonholed in this bar, but what would the growth be? And so I think to me, it was sort of along those lines of how to approach Joe, is to be like, she may act a bit immature, but she's smarter than that. she's seen a lot of things, and she's gonna try to, she's gonna get what she wants out of Dean,
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that thought process of her as a character, amidst all the great smut. There was like, oh, this badass that, maybe is underestimated, I think, a lot too, and how she was able to, I think, work, like you said, like kind of work it to her advantage and get what she wanted. So I like that one a lot. And I also did like Close Shave, but I know that Karlee may want to talk a little bit about that one.
No. I picked that one for you. I was like, oh my God, it's got the line. She loves the line.
I do.
Yes.
I love the like a dolphin's belly. And I just like watching, I think watching Dean's reactions and then trying to read Dean's reactions. I've read a couple of stories, I think, kind of like that with like the POV where you just kind of don't know and you're trying to figure him out. And then like Sam, like testing it a little bit and then like liking, like thinking, like, okay, well, maybe if I do this, will you notice this? And I like the idea of just really thinking about being in a bunker with all of those other people, which I don't particularly care for. I hate that there was a moment in time when so many people were in the bunker. But then seeing, like, I really thought about it. I'm like, yeah, why isn't Sam bringing clothes into the bathroom and like changing and then going out? I'm like, oh no, he wants this possible, interaction to start or whatever, or to get the reaction out of Dean and stuff like that. I liked, the like a dolphin's belly. I really love that you took that and just went to town on it. I really like that a lot. Yeah. And I was appreciative too of all the smut was really good too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I actually do have thoughts on a Close Shave. I do. And when Sandra was like, do you have any questions, Swad? And I'm like, oh, I have questions. I'm not going to put them on the doc, but I have questions. So, and I don't know if Streamer will be able to listen to this. I don't think we spoiled anything. But she is resolutely with me, because when you guys came on for the Masquerade and it actually came out like who you guys were, and I was like, oh my fucking God. I messaged her afterwards and I was like, I'm aware of these two people on AO3, and she was like, yes. And I was like, they've just been on the fucking podcast. And she also had a little fangirl moment with me. But I know her feelings are the same on this. So, and this specifically happens in a Close Shave. Why do so many of your fics fade to black before the I'm not going to say the good stuff because there's a lot of smut, but this is a reoccurring theme where you're like, this much smut, and then a door closes or something else happens, and then I'm like, where's the rest of it? Amy, where's the rest of it? Amy, where's the fucking rest of it? Amy, where's the rest of it?
Because it's Masquerade, and so it's just about like getting it out quickly, and probably I hit a point where I'm like, all right, well, there's been some sex, I'm going to close the door now and move on to the next prompt so I can get like a bunch of them out this round.
Oh my God. Well, I need you to know that you are personally responsible for a significant case of blue balls over here in the UK. Significant. Like, I nearly had to go to a doctor. It was a problem. Because they're so good. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so into this. And then you know, like the little scrolly bar on your phone, and you realize it's near the end of the page, and you're like, where's the rest of it? Fuck, where's the rest of it? Oh my God, where's the rest of it? And then, like, I understand that they're for prompts and stuff, but I'm like, please come back and finish it. Do a second chapter. Where's the fucking rest of it, Amy? So, yeah, I loved Close Shave. And you know what? One of the things that really stuck out to me is Sam kind of acknowledging that he could do this self-care for himself. It didn't have to be, like, oh, he'd done it for Jess, he'd done it for somebody, but he could do this for him if he wanted to. And I think that's important for Sam at that time. So I was a big fan of that, but also I was like, where's the fucking rest of it? You literally shut the door and faded to black. Where's the rest of it? So, yeah.
So twofold to answer part of that, or to tack onto it, is like the self-care thing. Like, again, I reread it this morning, and I was like realizing, like the whole beginning part is all about how like he wasn't doing his normal routine while Dean Michael was out in the world, right? And he wasn't shaving, and he was like kind of talking about like he maybe wouldn't even shower until like his third cup of coffee, versus we've seen it in canon that he is the early riser, he's the one who makes the coffee, like all this kind of stuff. So I think to me it's also representative of, well, now that like the world is kind of back to normal, you know, like, but also like he's kind of still disrupting a little bit of his life by doing this, but also just taking the time because he doesn't have to just roll out of bed and hurry up and find, like, keep looking for Dean, right? Like, he has the time now to do stuff. And then I will say, funnily enough, was when I was reading it and I got like to the, you know, I honestly didn't remember that that's what it was. I thought this was going to be one. I thought I wrote one before. Maybe I've just read enough of them about things like where when Sam's arm was busted that, you know, like Dean shaves for him. And then of course things get, you know, hot from there. And I somehow thought it was that. And then as I kept reading, I was like, oh, I forgot that I had him shave like everywhere. Okay. And so it was kind of new to me in a way. And then I got towards the end and I was even thinking like, so like I couldn't remember like what do they do to reciprocate to Dean, and then it faded to black. I was like, oh yeah, that's what happened.
Nothing. Yeah, I love that. The author themselves is like, oh, what happened at the end? Oh, I just closed the fucking door, did I? Oh, all right, great. Another thing, it's one of those little glimpses of realism that you so rarely see in fic because it's not necessary. But when you do see, you're like, oh my god, I love that. That Sam took 3 razors into the bathroom to do the whole shebang, and I was like, oh, that's so accurate. That's no guy would ever do that, but you would need at least 3. Yeah, but like, I mean, it's just I mean, shaving. I'll be honest, like I'm a bigger girl. Like just to shave my legs, sometimes I need a couple of razors. You know, it's just, and especially when you haven't done it. Like imagine how. I mean, not like he is like, you know, Sasquatchy, but, you know, that hair has to be a decent length down there. It's not going to be an easy shave. So, well, and Sam seems like a planner, right? To be like, I should bring in a couple of razors just to make sure.
He was prepared.
Yeah. He knew what he was doing and he had his eyes on the prize and he was like, yes, I will. Yes. But yeah, I love the fact that you reread it and you were like, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, nothing.
Well, you probably didn't want to have to deal with like the hair growing back at some point either. So you don't have to deal with like the itchy factor too.
Yeah. What's not going to happen in the time that Dean was going to get hit, Sandra?
Don't know.
It's would have been like a half an hour event.
You don't know.
Oh my God.
We won't know. I think when I first read the title too, I expected something like that of like somebody helping someone shave, you know, like that kind of a thing too, when I just read the title. So pleasantly surprised by that one.
Me too.
That's always good when you go back on your old work and you're like, oh, that's what I did. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I have a couple more questions. And again, I'm probably going to put you on the spot. So if you don't know the answer, it's fine.
Problem.
Are there some, and not to say that, you know, because I know you've used like, you know, big pompous, like but like, are there favorite works of yours that you've written that just stand the test of time kind of situation for you?
Yes.
You don't have to say what they are if you don't want to. Like,
no, I do. No. I was going to go directly to one that I've always said when I've, because also like within our little friends group in recent years, we did a thing once where we were like, what is the fic that you were most proud of that you like the most that like, and then like we all agreed to read that. I mean, because we've read a lot of each other's stuff, but we all have a very vast library of a lot of fics. So it's kind of like, you know, we may have missed fics back before we met each other sort of thing. Yeah. So this is the one I always mention, and it's for various reasons, but it's called This Long Silence. It's probably like 10 years old now, but it's kind of apocalyptic. It's J2. It's inspired by, I would say. There's a movie with Timothy Oliphant where it's like The Crazies. I was about to say like, the people go crazy. The Crazies, where it's like, it's kind of like it seems zombie-ish, but you find out in the end like what really is happening. But it's kind of that thing of this really small town. Timothy Oliphant is the sheriff, and then everybody goes crazy and he gets separated from his family and he's trying to go find his wife and his daughter. So it's similar to that, where it's J2 and Jensen is the sheriff and things start going nuts and then they get separated at some point. Him and Jared are neighbors and there's tension and you can tell that Jensen cares for him a lot, but they're not like an outward, you know, public couple kind of thing. And so he then is trying to find him. I'm really proud of it partly because I took a lot of time to work on it and like rework it and like tweak language and really hone in on like the tone I wanted and how I wanted it to go. And so even just from like I think it's still like some of my best quality writing, but also I don't know. I think partly because I like the story. I like how certain parts go. I like how certain pieces unravel when you start to learn more secrets. Yeah. I mean, and it's truly, I think I wrote one timestamp to it. And back in the day, people would do a lot of timestamps to stories to like fill out your verse.
Right.
And that's one where I only did one timestamp, but I still kind of was like, well, I don't know if I really love this timestamp. Maybe two, but I was like, I didn't feel like I wanted to fill out the verse because I just felt like it stood well on its own.
That's great.
What was the title
long
of that?
Silence. I'm writing this
long
down.
Silence.
Yes.
I'm literally searching 803 for it. That's all.
So I will warn so that Karlee doesn't get upset with me. There is no porn.
Okay.
There is a fade to black. But also, I would also say that to stand it up to say that, for those who maybe aren't big into J2, it's an AU, but like if you're not super big into J2, you could, still imagine them that it's not like it's going to get graphic sexually if that's a boundary or whatever. But I still think like it's a good story of just everything else that happens in the bond between them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I'm
Smut is
definitely
always
interested in it. Yeah.
It's always optional. Like it's preferred, but it's optional. And when someone says this is the thing I'm most proud of, I'm like, well, you better believe I'm going to go read that. It's on my marked for later list as we speak.
Yeah. Good.
Cool.
Awesome. And then I guess maybe try to round it out too. Who are some of your favorite fanfic authors? Like maybe people that kind of got you into Supernatural fanfic, or just maybe like people over the years that you're just like super great friends with and they're just awesome, like your favorites?
Yeah, immediately my brain went to Kelly. Her name is spelled Kelleigh, and full disclosure, we are very, very good friends. I'm literally flying out to go visit her in like 2 weeks. We vacation together a lot. We've been friends probably since like 2010, 2011, but she is a really talented writer. And I think that she is really great at choosing certain like turns of phrase, or she, things like she's written a fic where it was about, like she kind of like chooses words in her fics based on the story itself. So for instance, like she's written a fic about where like Jensen's a chef. And so then she uses certain verbs that are more associated with food, but to describe like what's happening, almost like if someone's going to like swoon, instead she'll say like they melt, or, it's like we're trying to butter him up, and she'll use those kind of turns of phrases. When she's done one that was like where one of them was a firefighter, she used more like temperature related, things like, this was,
so cool.
the tension was blazing. I'm making this up. She's much better at it than I am, but she does a really great job at that. She's a really great job at like setting the tone and setting like an atmosphere. It's to the point that there was something in Masquerade where she had said she'd only written 2 fics, and I already knew which 2 they were. And then when I was tagging fics, I read one that I was like, this really feels like her, but that would mean she wrote a 3rd one. And it turned out it was her. And I was like, I knew it. I knew
this was you.
Yeah. So she does a lot of that. And I would highly recommend maybe, more for like the Wincest stuff. Is she wrote a Big Bang years ago that I adored, and it was before I was really into like truly appreciating Wincest, but called Bell's Pond. And that where they're separated, and it's not quite AAU, but it's it like dives off of the show where it's like one of them is stuck in this like weird reality, and they can only visit each other like once a year. And so it's just like all this stuff that happens, and it's beautiful, and just the world that she sets in it is amazing. But
great.
That's cool.
No, that's awesome. I'm gonna like look Kelly up too, just to like read some of that stuff, because it sounds great.
Link a model.
Great. This has been lovely, Amy. Do you have?
Yes.
I'm so glad that you were able to come back on. Do you have like any last words maybe for any of our like listeners who may be, writers of fanfic that, can give them as we've been talking about all the ways that we can't write and that we're finding issues, like any like just sort of words of wisdom that you could pass along?
I'd say keep writing, like just even when it feels like it's not working or you need to switch gears. I mean, I feel like definitely over time, you get better at it the more you do it. Also, reading helps because you just pick up the way that people say things. And and you can kind of pick up start to understand better ways to tell things. But also like embrace what you enjoy and are good at about writing, because I think we all just bring different perspectives. We all have different talents to certain things. Like I mentioned, like Kelly is like really good at like setting the atmosphere. And I have like two other friends who are really great at like sci-fi and like cops and robbers type thing of like setting up action and how do you describe that. I don't feel like I'm that great at that, but like I feel like I lean into a lot more of like banter and setting the emotion of a scene. And so like find what it is that works for you and go for it and just lean into it and appreciate it and try to have fun while you're doing it. I know it gets stressful, but just try to have fun.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that's what we're all doing it for too, like you're doing it for the fun of it, even though it can be excruciatingly painful.
This is supposed to be fun. This isn't supposed to be life or death. And,
absolutely.
We're doing it for free. So just have fun.
We are, aren't we?
So be nice in the comments.
Good luck with work. And hopefully it's not super busy in the worst sense, and you can get a little bit of a breather and stuff in there. Yeah.
Hope everything goes good with you folks.
Thank you.
Hey,
we will need it.
It's been a week for like about 3 months now.
Yeah.
It's been a week.
Yeah. So your month has been like our months. Yeah. So we totally get it. We totally get it.
It was lovely talking with you.
Yes,
you
thank
both
you for
are
coming
riot,
back.
So
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was great talking to you as well.
Yeah. All right.
Speak soon.
See you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
This was good. I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed talking to her about the process,
Yeah.
and especially like the whole group, like the group of groups and the betas and stuff like that. And yeah.
That is genuinely one of my favorite things about writing is like, the people that you meet and then, the friendships you make and just the people that you can surround yourself with where you can just bounce ideas off them. And, you don't have to feel like pressured that all your ideas have to be great, because these people, they've got you and they support you and they give you advice that you might not want to hear, but maybe you need. I'm actually just curious, since we asked Amy what her what is the work that she's most proud of? What is the work that you're most proud of?
I used to think it was Some Sunny Day, but I really like Factory Reset. And I don't know if I could say it's something I'm most proud of, but I feel like when something just feels like it's writing itself. I really loved that process. I think getting your feedback on some of the stuff, but then hoarding it towards the end and being like, no, I'm going to wait and show you the rest of this later. Like,
I know.
But getting that thought about Dean out there and how he would, react to that situation. I just really love, Julie and Dean together. But again, whenever I hear you guys talk Mary Sue and self-insert, I'm like, yeah, that was me. Some Sunny Day.
Yeah, but you do it
over,
Yeah. You do it in such a way that it doesn't. Julie feels like her own character. It's only the people that know you well that can see the self-insert in there.
Yeah. I really like Past Due too. That's a thing. Yeah. I like that one because that was like taking a character, but still getting in their POV, but a little bit different than me in a different situation. Yeah, most proud. I don't know. I really do like Factory Reset a lot. I feel like that's something
that was a big step away from what you would normally write, I think.
Yeah, because it was so good. I didn't do a lot of reader. I mean, even though I like to read reader stuff, I don't feel like I do as much reader as I do original fictional character, but this also felt, I think I do this weird amalgamation of original fictional characters and reader. So I'm not sure, but yeah. What about you? I know what you would have said before Demonic Junkies. I feel like you said need, but I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, it would have been need. Need is still it's still really up there. But I've got to say, currently, today, 28th of October, 2023, it's perfect balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's different in both of them, but it's for the same reason in both of them. They're just really authentic, you know, and they're not necessarily pretty, and they're not necessarily sanitized. They're just, you know, it's quite visceral. And I feel like there's an honesty in that, you know, not to say that I write dishonestly, like I do, you know, I put my heart and soul into everything I write, and it's just what you get is the different times that you catch me, and I'm just as honest in my early reader Sam stuff as I am, you know, in my later. But it just, those two feel more like they were written for me than for anybody else, you know. And I never want to be the kind of author that writes stuff just because it'll be popular. Although that is very nice, you know. Jumping ship to Wincest, and I was like, oh my God, there's so many people here and they love it. But that being said, Perfect Balance is, I mean, it's doing fine, but obviously it's very dark. So people are not necessarily, that's not what they want necessarily, but it just,
it feels authentic for you.
Yeah,
right?
It feels authentic. It feels like something that I wrote for me and not because I thought that was what somebody else wanted to read.
Yeah.
But I will forever have a special place in my heart for Sam. As in the first thing I posted, which is entitled Sam. Not like, we all know I have a special place in my heart for Sam Winchester. But the first thing I posted on AO3 so many years ago now, I will always have a special place for that.
Yeah. I actually just I re-listened to the Perfect Day thing that I recorded, and I was like, you know, it was a crazy experiment to see three different perspectives, you know, like, and how that comes together, but it all comes together and works, I think, really well. And the voices are so very clear and distinct, you know, but they work together in a way that's really, really special. You know, I think between you and Dee and myself trying that out, that took a lot of courage, you know, to do something like that together. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're still, you know, doing this and, you know, trying to talk to other, you know, writers and getting their thoughts as to why they do this crazy thing, you know, and what they get out of it and how it's created community and friendships. And, you know, like Amy was saying, going to go and visit, you know, another fellow fanfic author in person because of the relationship and friendship that they've built over the years. It's special. It's special. And, you know, everybody talks about the smut and the porn and stuff like that, but I think it just goes so much beyond that it's pretty impressive. No, I agree with your picks. And again, Perfect Balance is not for me, but the way that you write certain things, I feel in Wincest, especially, there's like a freedom, I think, that you experience with that. That's great to read. There's certain lines that, you know, it feels like you. It feels like you know?
Ah, thank you.
So I might not like all the blood and gore, but I get it.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, as I find myself, you know, gaining confidence as an author and being like, fuck it, I'm going to write what I want to write, not what.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy. We'd love to know if anybody thoughts about, you know, anything Amy talked about with the writing process and in general, and show her stuff a lot of love. If you enjoy J2 Wincest, you know, let us know how much you adore stuff that she writes. But yeah, if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at idlingintheimpala@gmail.com. You can comment on Spotify and use the Q&A section to share your thoughts. All our contact details are on our website. That's idlingintheimpala.com. Go check it out.
And don't forget to like, comment, share, follow, subscribe, and all that good stuff wherever you access your podcast. But especially if you are watching or listening on YouTube, likes, comments, subscriptions, all that good stuff really help the YouTube algorithm. And actually, I just checked while we were talking now, Sandra. Today, as of it is almost 8 p.m. in the UK on the 28th of October 2023, we are at 80 subscribers on YouTube and 100 followers on Spotify. And let me tell y'all, there were tears shed when we hit that 100 subscriber. There was so many supernatural gifts exchanged. I posted about it on Twitter, but the fucking Atlantic Ocean being in the way and everything, we could not exchange real life hugs. So there were a lot of back and forth supernatural hugs exchanged, but that is fucking surreal to us. And this is the first time we've recorded since hitting that milestone.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much. And, last push, 20 subscribers on YouTube, 100 subscribers by our birthday. Come on, guys. We've got like 2 months left yet. We can do the thing. But yeah, comments, likes, subscriptions, all that good stuff really helps us out on YouTube. All hail its benevolence. Check out the causes that we are championing in the description as well. There are charities in there, and there are, as it always seems to be rolling up to election season in America, y'all just need to pin down just like one fucking time. Like, don't, obviously you're too big, but there is, election information, arm yourself with knowledge, all that good stuff. Because without a fucking doubt, there will be some fuckery going on, especially with the presidential elections coming up next year as well.
Yeah.
And there are LGBTQ plus charities. The holidays are coming up. We know that's difficult. So those resources there if you want them. And of course, we are championing for World Central Kitchen and Doctors Without Borders, who are both on the ground in the Ukraine and in Gaza, helping out the people that are being affected by both the Russian invasion of the Ukraine unlawfully and the Israel-Hamas conflict in the Middle East as well. So if you can help those guys out to keep helping others out, that would be amazing. If you need any of the resources that are in the description, that is what they are there for. And with that, we will say thank you for joining us in the back seat, and we will see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.